And I have a lot of students in my classes. The majority of the students who take my class are children who are impacted by addictions. Most of them on the first day when I ask, why are you taking this class? Oh, it fits, the credits fit, they find out later when they learn more about
Mm.
what addiction is, that's why I'm here, right? We kind of gravitate towards different places. The universe, I believe, sends us to different places at different times that we need to be there. And because so many students have been impacted over the years, I feel like this is time. It's time because a lot of the women I counsel are adult children of alcoholics.
Hey guys, it's Stefanie. How are you? Welcome back to Table for Four, Family Conversation Podcast, and welcome to Sit Downs with Stefanie. Oh man, I have the honor with chatting with truly, truly remarkable individuals from a variety of backgrounds, from artists to educators and beyond. And definitely, my guests are going to be sharing their passions and talents and their stories and how they have impacted their own lives and the lives of others. These genuine conversations are an incredible opportunity to learn from one another, as well as gaining insight and inspiration, and definitely the experiences and definitely the perspectives from these amazing people. I'm so thrilled to bring you these stories. Now, again, welcome back to another episode on the podcast. As you are well aware, March is the month of Women's History Month. So it is a time to honor and promote an exploration, recognition, and exactly all the invaluable, valuable contributions women have made throughout American history. Now, it's paramount. We must shine a spotlight on their remarkable achievements in the various fields from science, literature, math, and more. So today I've had the honor, the biggest honor of talking with educator and author of a children's book, It Is Not My Fault. It is a Mom Choice Award recipient. So I just want to give you guys just a little bit of information about her. So if you're not familiar with the Mom's Choice Award, they recognize over 60 countries around the world, setting the benchmark of excellence in family-friendly media, products, and services. So my greatest honor is that the author is one of those winners. If you could see her, she's all the way over here in this purple book. You'll see her there. And she's one of the recipients for the Mom's Choice Award winner. And if you didn't know, the book is titled It's Not My Fault. Okay, I want to welcome to the podcast, Andrina Veit Cleveland.
Good evening, Stefanie. Thank you for inviting me to Table for Four.
Thank you so much. How is everything going so far?
Things are going well. I'm on a spring break for the semester and been a productive week and an enjoyable week. So it's all good.
It is. Sometimes we just need a break just from school and everything in general.
Yes, we do.
But the reason why we brought you here today is we're going to be discussing your book. Now, for my little short story, I first met you when there was a presentation for substance awareness at my college. So I had the opportunity to see your presentation. You presented the book, and I really resonated with that story. So I was just like, oh man, I have to have the chance to go and speak to her. Maybe we might have a good opportunity to do so. So we able to make it happen today.
I'm happy that we were able to get it together.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you can tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about the book, we would really appreciate for the listeners.
Okay, just a little bit about me. I've been teaching at Nassau Community College for 35 years. And I feel like I was always born to teach. As a child in elementary school, I always wanted to teach. By the time I went to college, I was an education major. But at the time, there were too many people in the field of education. So my dream was switched to something else. They needed women in science. So I majored in microbiology and public health. I worked in a hospital healthcare setting for a number of years at LIJ and North Shore University Hospital. And I wanted to do something more with people. I was just really identifying and killing bacteria and parasites and viruses and all that stuff, but not a lot of interaction with people. So I went back for a master's in community health education and then another master's in social work. So I've come full circle back around to where I want to be is teaching. And in the beginning, I thought I wanted to teach elementary education. And for my first master's, I went to Adelphi University. I was given a graduate assistantship, which paid for my tuition, and I needed to do things for the professors that I was working under. And I was substitute teaching human sexuality classes and other health courses. And I just loved the experience of being in the classroom. So then I decided that's what I wanted to do. So it brought me right back. And still in the health field, but it just brought me full circle to being able to teach. And as far as writing is concerned, I've always enjoyed writing. So this is something that I feel like I've been working towards teaching the coursework that I teach. I teach several sections of alcoholism, addictions, and abusive behaviors. And I've seen there's been a need for children's book on this topic. They have organizations for adults, but there's not a lot of organizations for children. There's Alateen for teenagers, but nothing for younger children. And I think it's really important for representation of Black, Indigenous people of color. And I'm always looking for myself in books. And that's why I felt that was the passion that drove me to write this book.
And it was really one of the first things that I remember during the presentation, that it was a story that I resonated. I myself, I identify as an adult of alcoholism. So an adult child. So for me, that was really one of the reasons why I resonated with this. And it made so much sense to me. I was like, oh, these are the things that happened when I was younger. It just was full circle, as you mentioned before, that it was something that I really resonated with. And I recognized myself in the story as well. So you mentioned that it's so seeing ourselves in stories is super important because it does have that representation. But having an opportunity to read the book and reading it with my children, it was really, it was a special thing because now we have an understanding a little bit more of the importance of this type of book.
I'm so happy. Growing up, my identified patient in my family who had addictions was my great uncle. And he lived with us for several years. And I never knew as a child what the problem was. So even though he ended up leaving our family, going back to Panama and getting killed fatally, he got hit by a bus.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry to hear
that. He was always drinking. He was our primary caretaker. And I never really knew what the problem was because no one ever spoke about it. The mental picture of people in my life of someone who was an alcoholic was somebody who didn't go to work, right? And he worked. He was a pastry chef. And when he wasn't doing his job as a pastry chef, he was available to take care of my brother and myself. So he was a mean, belligerent alcoholic, but no one ever saw him that way. So writing the book was part of my healing journey. And as a therapist, in order to help other people, we need to work on ourselves. So I've worked on myself. But when I was working on my social work degree, I was working at an outpatient treatment facility, and I found myself, a lot of their stories were resonating with me. And I was wondering, well, what's going on here? And the more I learned about addiction, the more I realized how much addiction I had in my family on both sides. But as I said, that mental picture, a lot of people think of the person who's living on the streets when they've lost so many things as them having, an illness. But as long as people are functioning, going to work, it just means they haven't gotten to that. Their lives haven't spiraled down to that point yet, is the operative word. So even though my uncle passed away, I thought as a child, all of our problems will be over, because he's not coming back.
That's never the case.
I felt a tremendous amount of guilt, Stefanie, as a child. I think I was 10 or 11, feeling like everybody's sad about him not coming back, but I felt relieved. because
Same.
I didn't have to deal with him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But then I wasn't okay. I didn't find my voice till years later when I worked on my own therapeutic journey. In order to be able to help other people, I had to work on myself. And working on this book, It's Not My Fault, Rena is the character. There's a piece of Rena that's me. So Rena's father in the book is the alcoholic, but it was my uncle who was my primary caretaker. And my father, a lot of the men in my family would use alcohol as a coping mechanism, for just hardships that they experienced in life. And so there's so many different stages of alcoholism. So my father was able to manage his before it ever spiraled out of control like it did with my uncle. So I just felt like this was my purpose. This was meant to be. I don't want children to feel alone, and I certainly don't want them to feel like it's their fault, because I thought if I tried to be perfect, and I know that no one's perfect. I learned that in adulthood, but as a child, I was trying to be well behaved, then maybe he wouldn't be so angry.
Cause no trouble, make sure you don't aggravate anybody.
Exactly.
Of that very walking on glass, very, very.
Yes, constantly, and just so vigilant, which I ended up with panic attacks because of it, because I kept trying to be I was always on edge. Our stress response goes off when we perceive danger. Mine was going off all the time. And it wasn't until I really got healthier by unraveling a lot of this stuff in my own recovery that I realized, okay, that's what explained it. I was always on alert, never knowing what to expect when I would go home. So, it was difficult, but we sometimes go through the hardships to get to the good. And I feel like if my story resonates with other people, they get to a place of healing. And that's what's important. And you don't have to wait until you're an adult, or even if you are an adult, we all have inner children inside of us that need to be healed. So I think that it's important for us to revisit some of those things that we may have pushed down. And then when they surface from reading something that resonates, or hearing someone speak and that resonates with us, it helps us to be motivated to work on those missing pieces that needs to recover.
Absolutely. And thinking about the missing pieces, I realized that during your presentation that I was an adult of alcoholism, and it made sense. It totally clicked. And I was just like, I never knew that this was the extent and how it reached all the way to adulthood. So then when I found myself in therapy, I was in therapy between 5 and 6 years. A lot of it resonated from my childhood. Just seeing the differences between different family members being, afflicted with alcoholism and being afflicted with drug addiction and things of that matter. I was like, why am I feeling this type of way? And it started to make sense. And I'm like, wow, in my adulthood. So having therapy, having the outlet, and having the communications, that led to a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and a lot of stress. And I unfortunately took it out on other family members that had absolutely nothing to do with it. So I find myself feeling guilty for getting upset for something that happened to me so long ago. It was at nobody else's fault. So finding that way through until you get it. Until you get it.
That's right. We all have this inner child inside of us. And the way to get to that place of healing is to treat that inner child the way we would treat any other child in our lives. That child needs to be listened to. And anything intuitively that comes up, we need to want to work on it, and to really give ourselves acts of loving kindness. And I teach healthy living and stress management. So the topics that I teach at the college are things that I'm very passionate about and things that I live. So I try to live mindfully. I try to stay in the moment. I try to do the things that I advocate for my students, as well as my clients that I counsel. I'm a therapist, and I meet people on Zoom, and that's been helpful because I've been able to reach a lot of women who ordinarily wouldn't have transportation to be able to meet with me otherwise. So it's I just feel like I'm doing a lot of the things I've always wanted to do. So it's a rich life for me. I really feel rich by being able to give back, being able to help lift other people up. People have helped me. So I just think that it's the way of giving back.
Absolutely. And it's so important that we have people that have that experience, Because sometimes if you can experience yourself, you're not in the position to really help anybody else. you know? So for me, I truly understood and it made sense. But I want to hear a little bit more about the book. I hear you have a presentation for us. I'm super
Yes, I
excited to hear.
do. Okay.
So let's get you all started. Let's get you all set up.
That I did at the college. So let me go to the first slide. This is the book. It's Not My Fault. It's a powerful story of hope and healing for children of alcoholics. That's what the COA stands for. And you may be familiar with the acronym ACOA, as Stefanie was talking about, as an adult child of alcoholism, or just an adult child of addictions, period. According to the 2019 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, they've estimated that about 14.5 million people aged 12 and older had a diagnosis of alcohol use disorder. That's the clinical term. A lot of people call it alcoholism, but if you're looking in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, 5th edition, that mental health professionals use, the diagnosis is alcohol use disorders. 2.4 million people have had a drug and alcohol problem. 8.3 million people have had a diagnosis of substance use disorder. And for every person with an alcohol problem, it's estimated that 4 family members are directly affected. According to the National Association for Children of Addiction, their acronym is NACOA, that 1 in 4 children under the age of 18 years are touched by the adverse effects of a parent abusing drugs, alcohol and drugs. Addiction doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter what race. It doesn't matter our age. It doesn't matter what class, if someone is wealthy, if someone is poor, if someone is middle class. It doesn't discriminate. It doesn't matter our gender. Addiction can happen to anyone. So sometimes, as it says, there's a belief that only certain people could have this chronic illness of addiction, and that's not true. And what feeds the denial is that so many people have a mental picture that doesn't match what a person with an addiction really looks like. So only 5% could be someone who's homeless, living on the streets, where their lives have spiraled so out of control that they've lost their jobs, they've lost relationships with families, they've lost their finances, they very often have health problems. And 95% are functioning people who have addictions. So they are problem drinkers who could be employed or employable. They come from all occupations, all socioeconomic statuses, races, and genders. And the more people think in the other terms that it can happen to them, that their person in their lives isn't like those people that's matching their mental picture, it just keeps the cycle going and it feeds the denial. So in my book, it's, as you can see, it's titled It's Not My Fault. I start talking about my family. And in the family is a pretty much traditional family. So my name is Rena. I'm 5 years old. I live in a big house in a town called New Rochelle, and my mommy, Laura, and daddy, Jason. And he's a lawyer and he loves to help people. Every morning he rides the train to New York City. So we have my dad, who is a lawyer, mom is a nurse, and I have a brother, right? So they live in a beautiful home, beautiful community. So again, it's reinforcing that addiction could happen to anyone. It doesn't matter, that someone doesn't have to be someone who's poor or someone who's of a certain race or gender, that very often people have a different mental picture of what RAC actually is. So there's something that happens in families, and this comes from a researcher by the name of Joan Jackson. Joan Jackson studied the effects of addiction on the family, and she has a stage that's called disorganization and chaos. Families are living from one crisis to the next. So this is speaking about that. In families with addictions, there can be so much disorganization and chaos. Families are living from crisis to crisis. Bills aren't getting paid. Arguments are occurring. Sometimes the arguments can lead to violence, and children are witnessing this. And it frightens them, and it puts them in this full fight or flight mode. Hospitalizations may occur from injuries or from health problems that the patient has. Addicted people go on benders. Benders are drinking sprees where they disappear for days and they're drinking the whole time. And sometimes they don't even have memory of what they did during those days that they are away. They can be impaired driving. They're driving impaired and they can crash their cars. And accidents is too soft. So when you talk impaired driving, whether it's drugs or alcohol, these are crashes. This is an example from the book where there's an argument that's going on between mom and dad, and who's in the middle there. The poor children are there, and you may not be able to see it as clearly, but the little Rena has tears. Now she's feeling out of control. So daddy works very hard. When he comes home from work, he likes to pour juice. That's what it was called. No, nobody said it was alcohol, into a big glass and sit in his comfy chair. He says he needs the juice to relax after a stressful day. He walks funny when he gets up to turn the TV on. Mommy shouts in a loud voice, "Now that's enough." Daddy gets angry and yells at mommy. They yell so loud it frightens me and Larry. This happens every night. So you can imagine the stress that builds up for children witnessing this kind of behavior. More disorganization. Family events go on. This is after having a large family dinner at grandma's house. And when it comes time to go home, daddy's had too much to drink and mom is really cross with him. So now she's got to drive home because she wants everyone to get home safely. So it's saying when it's time to leave, mommy drives us home. Daddy drank too much juice, so I won't let him drive. Larry and I stand back as daddy walks to the car, kind of funny. I don't like when daddy drinks so much juice. It makes mommy upset and sad. I feel that way too. So NACOA has been a voice for children for over 30 years. That's the National Association for Children of Addiction. They're fueled by deep and abiding passion to break the silence for millions of families feeling entrapped by the don't talk unspoken family rule. NACOA works to ensure that children can find their own voice and by sharing their experiences, find the hope and healing they deserve. So I can relate to this in my family of origin. No one ever talked about the drinking. No one ever labeled the problem. So when nothing is labeled, children use it, leave it up to their imagination as to what's really going on. So the other unspoken rules besides don't talk, these govern the communication in families of addictions. So it's not like everyone sits down and decides these are unspoken rules. These are happening in order to deal with the chaos of addiction that people are living with. So the don't talk is keep the peace. Don't talk about anything that causes conflict. The addiction becomes the family secret. If someone mentions the drinking, the person doesn't say, well, thank you very much. I think I'll go to an AA meeting or I'll go to therapy or I'll go to rehab. They're in denial. So if someone were to say, I think you drink too much, you have a problem, they're going to say, I am not. They're in denial. And if your family members are feeling defensive, they know that you're defensive about being labeled an alcoholic. And then the children and family members respond with, I guess we can't talk about anything that's going to rock the boat because I have enough stress, not knowing what's going to happen from moment to moment. We're not going to talk about it because I don't feel safe to talk about it. So we just keep stuff inside. Don't trust. Promises are broken. When someone has a blackout, if someone has alcohol use disorders, they have a blackout. They're drinking the whole time. They're making plans. They don't remember the plans that they're making. They might remember what they're saying in the moment. But then when the date comes that they're supposed to meet someone, they don't show up. And then when we see them again, they act like they don't know what we're talking about. So in order to trust, we need to feel safe. We need to know that someone's word is bond. Their words need to match the behavior. And that's not happening. Someone may promise to come to my tennis match or to my piano recital or my graduation. But if they were in a blackout, they don't remember it. So then the trust is broken. Don't feel. It's too painful to feel. If our feelings aren't being validated, if I'm crying and someone tells me I'm going to give you something to cry for because you're making too much noise because they're hungover, it's too painful. It's unsafe to feel. So we start numbing out those feelings and pushing them away and don't feel anything. So in order to break the above unspoken rules, children and adults need to feel safe. They need to have their feelings validated. They need to be around people who understand what they're going through. They need to be heard. They need to feel like what they have to say is important. In my book, we notice that we have Larry and Rena. There's this yelling that's going on every night. Okay. The yelling that's going on every night. So she says, I get so scared that sometimes I cry and run to Larry's room. We cover our ears. I squeeze my teddy bear so tight that he falls to the floor. I'm sorry, little bear. I don't like the yelling either. Don't cry, Teddy. I love you. These are things that she would like to hear. Daddy tells Mommy to drink the juice with him. Come on, have some fun, he shouts. But when they drink together, they both act silly and yell loud. Rena, Larry, brush your teeth, go to bed. Oh no, now we won't have story time with Mommy. It makes me even more scared. Sometimes I cry and stay with Larry. We go to bed and pull the covers over our ears so we don't have to hear the yelling. Children have to grow up real fast in families where there's addictions. And so the next morning, parents are hungover. Larry is helping Rena with breakfast. So this is what's happening here the next morning. Mommy and Larry sleep a long time. Sometimes I go in their room and ask Daddy to play, and he yells, go play quietly. I have a headache. Don't make noise or I'll spank you both. So Larry tells me, hush, be quiet, while he makes the Cheerios and milk for breakfast. We don't want to get into trouble or make Daddy angry, but we don't understand why he gets so mad. It's hard to stay quiet all the time. It's hard for children to stay quiet all the time. They're not able to be spontaneous. There's so many mixed, confusing messages that are going on all the time. Learning to label the drinking problem. So in this scene, Rena's in kindergarten. Her teacher is reading a book during story time titled A Drinking Problem. And she has this awareness now that this is what this is called, right? So she's saying, it says, Mommy drives us to school every day. I love kindergarten. Story time is my favorite part of the day. My teacher's name is Miss Anna. We sing songs while she plays the piano. We color and play games, play dress up, eat lunch, and have nap time and story time. Today, Miss Anna read us a book about a drinking problem called alcoholism. It's an illness that can happen when someone drinks too much alcohol. She explained that Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and treatments at rehab centers can help people with drinking problems. And Rena has this thought, but Daddy may not want to go to an AA meeting. But at least she's able to hear language to be able to label what the problem is. Miss Anna goes on to explain what blackouts are. And she says, Miss Anna told us that families blame themselves for the drinking problem. Children push feelings away because they hurt so much. All your feelings are okay to feel and share, whether you're happy, sad, afraid, confused, or lonely. Many children have alcoholism in their families. You are not alone. So in Rena's thought bubble, she's saying, I am not alone. Because we feel so alone when we don't have a voice and we can't talk about this family secret. So having this story time empowers Rena to be able to talk about it. So breaking that unspoken rule, don't talk, is huge for Rena's recovery. That she's able to trust her teacher, Miss Anna, to go and talk about what's going on in her house. So after story time, I whisper to Miss Anna, I think my daddy is sick, like we heard in the story today. And Miss Anna is validating her by saying, Rena, I'm so sorry to hear this, but I'm glad you shared it with me. I'll talk with your mom about it after school. Remember, Rena, it's not your fault. You did not make your daddy drink. When Mommy came to pick me up from school, Miss Anna asked to speak with her. I finished cleaning up my desk while they talked. Again, in the think bubble for Rena, did Miss Anna share what I told her? So the language is there. She knows how to label what the problem is. She's getting validation from her teacher, Miss Anna. she's trusting that things are going to get better by saying something to Miss Anna. So breaking that unspoken rule of don't talk in a safe environment is critical for Rena's recovery. It doesn't have to be kept inside. She can trust, she can talk, she's learning how to label feelings as well. So labeling the problem, a plan for help. Mommy is sitting with Larry and Rena after she met with Miss Anna at school, and she was given some literature, and she's learning about where families can get help. So in this slide, she's talking about AA meetings, Alcoholics Anonymous for daddy to go to, and that the family, the three of them are going to go to an Al-Anon meeting. Al-Anon meetings are for family members and friends who are directly impacted by someone else's alcoholism. So on this slide, she's saying, Mommy shows us the colorful pamphlets Miss Anna gave her. Daddy may have an illness called alcoholism, Mommy says. She told me I did not make Daddy sick. It's good that you shared this with her. Will he get better, Mommy? Larry asks. Only if he stops drinking. Miss Anna told me about Alcoholics Anonymous, a program that helps adults with alcoholism stop drinking. There's another program called Al-Anon for families like us who are hurt by drinking. And there's even a special children's program called NACOA, the National Association for Children of Addiction. For you and Larry, we'll go to the meeting at church, even if Daddy won't, we say together. So sometimes what happens in some families, family members choose to get healthy by going to meetings like Al-Anon, but the person with the addiction may choose not to go. Family members still can get healthy no matter what. They have a safe place that they can go to share feelings with people who understand, to talk about their own issues, and to build trust. And that helps them with their own social skills outside in the real world every day. Otherwise, without treatment, they stay very defended. They're not able to trust people. They're not able to talk. They don't feel like they have a voice, and they are not in the world of feelings. Family recovery from the effects of addictions. Recovery is a process, something the individual with the addiction and families work on one day at a time. Family members can choose to get help, even if the addicted person never gets sober, or even if they die. So if they die, that person has still been affected by that person's addiction. So it's important for family members to still get healthy. The inner child wounds from living with family addiction remain if children don't get help. Speaking from my own experience, my great uncle was the alcoholic in my life. He died from an alcohol-related problem that occurred, an injury that occurred, and I thought everything would be fine, and it wasn't. So as an adult, I started working on some of my own healing to heal from the wounds that occurred from living with him for so many years. Even though he died when I was 11, it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I really was able to label the problem and get some help. Family recovery. Recovery is possible through talk therapy or psychotherapy. Individual is one-on-one with a therapist. Group is with other people. Group is very effective in treating addictions with people who have the addictions as well as family members and friends who are directly impacted. We're able to find our voices with people who understand what we're going through. We're able to focus on ourselves. That's a mantra that you hear in the rooms of Al-Anon. Keep the focus on yourself. Because a lot of times people are so focused on the person with the addiction, they lose themselves in the process. So it's so important to learn these social skills, to have the confidence, to feel that what you have to say is important, to feel all kinds of feelings, and to build trust. Family therapy is important, that everyone get healthy, even if only one person had the addiction or multiple people had the addiction. Everyone needs to work on their communication, because the unhealthy communication was being locked in those unspoken rules of don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. Families learn how to communicate, to break all of those unspoken rules, and to be able to talk about real life experiences, to feel all kinds of emotions and know that feelings just are, and you go on to another feeling, and then being able to build trust. couple therapy, where couples haven't communicated healthily for years. This way, they're able to rebuild trust and have healthier communication and to work on those issues that may have triggered the drinking. Or family members very often enabling is helping, doing all the things that keep it going as a way of trying to stop the person from using. And we can't control another person. The only person we can control is ourselves. Self-help support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous or for the person with the addiction. Family members can benefit from Al-Anon, Alateen. They support their support groups and they focus on family members and friends healing. They don't go there to get tips on how to get the person into rehab. They're focusing on their own recovery process, how they have been impacted by the identified patient in their life. Family members learn to identify their feelings and thoughts, to share with others who come from families with addictions. The National Association for Children of Addiction provides education about addiction, trainings and programs for educators, for parents, for social workers, for justice system personnel, for healthcare providers, and for clergy. There are children's kits for kids that provide tools that are needed to implement support groups for children of addiction, educational prevention activities to help young children learn how to recognize what they're feeling and to find their voice. This page in the book is showing mommy at an Al-Anon meeting and her being able to realize that it's not her fault. And so this is being explained by the person who's leading the group. It's a non-professionally run group. There's a chairperson, so she's helping the participants to have an understanding. So this is just speaking about that. A lot of people greet us at church. A tall man helps Daddy find the AA meeting, and a nice lady takes us to the Al-Anon meeting. After everyone in Al-Anon introduces themselves, the leader says, alcoholism is a disease that affects the whole family. Everyone needs to heal because they are harmed by the drinking. The alcoholic has to stop. And she writes on the chalkboard, it's not your fault. You did not make the alcoholic drink, because a lot of times family members think if they didn't love them enough, they are trying to find reasons for the drinking and very often think they are to blame when they are not to blame. We can't make anyone drink. And this is just showing the whole room. We have family members who are there working on their recovery. You have children who are learning about all kinds of feelings, and that's what's on the feelings charts there. Because if they've been numbing out their feelings, it's important to try to put those feelings into words. So there are different emojis: happy faces, sad faces, confused faces, and being able to label the feeling with the expression, angry faces, all different types of feelings. And they just learn that they are. They don't have to push those feelings away. They can hold on to them. So earlier in the book, Daddy was always too busy to take time to do things because his preoccupation was with drinking. So in this slide, the whole family is going for a bike ride after the Al-Anon and the AA meeting. And that's what this is speaking to, that Daddy says, on the way home, Mommy and Daddy talked more about the AA meeting. And she says, I hope you'll go to an AA meeting one day and say to everyone, hello, my name is Jason and I'm an alcoholic. But let's take it one day at a time. So when someone labels themselves as being an alcoholic, that's huge for their recovery because they've been in denial. So for them to say it is a huge step. And Daddy agreed that he would. That was the first surprise. Then as we drove by the park near home, Daddy suddenly hollered out, stop the car. It's a beautiful day. Let's go for a family bike ride. So that was a promise that was broken earlier on in the book. And the children are delighted and they say, yippee, Daddy finally kept his promise. So it was his way of trying to make amends there. And he's open to treatment at least. So there are 7 C's of NACOA. And these are things that are important for family members and friends to take take in as well, and it's something that's taught by the National Association for Children of Addiction. Some children with moms and dads who drink too much think that it's their fault. Maybe you're one of those children. So that's the message for children. Well, it's not your fault and you can't control it, but there are ways that you can deal with it. So these are some of the ways. The first C is I didn't cause it. It's not your fault. You're not the reason why your parent drinks or drugs. Your parent has a disease. Addiction has been classified as a brain disease. It affects all of our neurotransmitters. You didn't cause the disease and you cannot do anything about it. You have no control over your parents' drinking or substance use. You didn't make the problem start and you can't make it stop. What the parent does is not your responsibility or your fault. Those are important messages for children to take in. The second C is I can't control it. Children may take steps to stop a parent's drinking and or using. They may take on a parental responsibility. They become parentified children. They have to grow up real fast, taking care of younger siblings, pouring out the booze. That's a way of trying to control it. If they pour it all out, they think the person won't drink. The person wants to use, they're going to find ways. They may throw away drugs that were hidden in the household. Some try to be perfect in all they do. Children hope these behaviors will help the problem go away. It's important for children to learn addiction is a disease. Once people start drinking, they cannot stop. It's called loss of control over the amount consumed. So it's important that people with addictions get help. The third C is I can't cure it. A child cannot stop addiction. Addicted people must get help. When they get help, it's called treatment and recovery. There's no cure for addiction. It's a chronic illness that has no cure. People can find joy, peace, and serenity by sticking with treatment and recovery one day at a time. It's the addicted person's responsibility to continue to work on their own health and wellness. It's not the child's responsibility. The fourth one is I can help take care of myself. This is something that I can do. Self-care is an important concept. Taking care of ourselves in body, mind, feelings, spirit. Examples are reading a book, playing a game, meditation, positive affirmations, mindfulness, being present, mindfully eating, mindfully playing. Instead of our minds wandering into what happened in the past and in the future, we're staying in that moment and enjoying it. Writing a gratitude list of things that we're thankful for can help reduce the stress that we're experiencing if our loved one never gets help. Or even if they are getting help, their stress is here to stay. And it's important for us to find ways to deal with other stressors that might be happening in our lives. And exercise is one of those great ways of doing it, as well as developing a gratitude list of things that we're grateful for. You're appreciating things. The fifth one is communicating feelings, helping children develop skills to identify and express feelings, give children feelings vocabulary to assist them with this process, helping them say, I feel sad. I feel sad because, right? So get them to fill in the blanks. Children can share their feelings with artwork, with writing, simply talking and sharing with others who have similar feelings of anger, hurt, fear, happiness. It's a powerful tool. It's a way for them to realize that we're not alone. Making healthy choices. It's important to teach children to make self-care choices, whether having fun with their friends, playing outside, reading a book, keeping a journal, singing and dancing in very silly ways. When children have had to grow up too fast, they lose their spontaneity. So it's important for them to be able to be capricious and fun, to be children again. It's important to teach them that it's okay to ask for help. It's important to introduce them to the concept of safe people in their lives they can turn to when times get tough. Safe people can be family members, teachers, coaches, ministers, or other trusted adults or therapists. It's important for our children to celebrate themselves. So the seventh C is celebrating me. Everyone is born with beauty and goodness inside. Unfortunately, the family disease of addiction has insidious ways of diminishing this. In children's programs, counselors often hold up mirrors to point out their special gifts, the talents that all of us possess, that children possess. It's important to take time to celebrate when children complete challenging tasks. They do well in school, they're being a good friend, being a good, showing good character, if they're excelling in sports or any creative arts. To acknowledge and honor these accomplishments, it helps children deepen a sense of connection and belonging. These are two critical components in the healing process. This next piece is an act of loving kindness that I'd like to share with you. It's a loving kindness mindfulness practice. So, this act of loving kindness mindfulness heart mind exercise I find is helpful to reduce stress. They're positive and affirming statements that we can all benefit from making. We all have an inner child inside of us. So it's important to ground yourself. So let's do some cleansing breaths where we're deeply inhaling through our nose and exhaling through our mouth like we're blowing through a straw. And another deep inhale and blowing the air out through your mouth more slowly like it's blowing through a straw. And on each exhale, squeeze our arms across your chest in an embrace. Linger for a full exhale. Take several breaths in this way where we're squeezing our arms as we inhale, embracing ourselves, and then exhaling. Take care for each word to hold its full meaning and silently affirm to yourself with this compassion. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be peaceful. We can also hold these intentions of loving kindness and call to mind someone we love deeply and affirm, may they be safe. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be peaceful. These are some resources. SAMHSA is the Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration national hotline that's listed there. It's a 24/7 hotline, 1-800-662-4357. I've spoken about the National Association for Children of Addiction. They have Kids for Kids. That's their website. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation on my book. And I hope that we all will continue to work on ourselves one day at a time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Cleveland, for taking that time and explaining. I mean, this was really the first presentation that I remember back then. And it's just been, brings back memories, lots and lots of memories. But I just wanted to ask a few questions. If there's any questions that, or anything else that you feel like you needed to include into this presentation. I know there was many, many bits and pieces of great information. So is there anything else that you would like to add from your story?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
So my first question is, when did you find your passion for writing? When did that begin?
Well, it's a really funny question. It's a funny story for me because I can remember in third grade having to write about an inanimate object. And I wrote about an eraser that came to life. And this pencil eraser, I just told this vivid story about this pencil's story, his whole little life as an eraser. And I remember it won an award in my class.
Did it?
It was like the best story of imagination.
Congrats.
And it was put up on the board and everybody was reading about this pencil eraser. That gave me the confidence to know that I can write. I have this imagination because remember, my family of origin, I had a great uncle who was an alcoholic who would shut down anything I had to say. So in third grade, my teacher emphasizing that I made this wonderful story, I resorted to writing as a young child. I used to journal. I used to journal my feelings at the time. They were diaries. We didn't call them journals.
Right, they were diaries, yeah.
Dear diary, and I would write about all these different things that I wanted to happen in my life. And that's where my passion started for writing it. It was a release. I teach healthy living and stress management, and I advocate that students journal. It releases, it's cathartic. And here I was, as a young child, finding that way to release pent-up thoughts and feelings that it wasn't safe to talk about, that I could just write about it.
I know myself, I've had so many diaries in my attic, well, my mom's storage, and they were books, books and books and books. I writing about my day, what went on, my feelings, my all the desires, my dreams, and things like that. And I go back and I revert to those journals, and I'm like, that didn't come true. That didn't come true. But then some of the things that I see myself doing now, I'm like, this is amazing. I'm like, how did I know at such a young age that this is something that I might be good at or not? So journaling for me has definitely been a beneficial thing for sure. And I still journal. I just do it in an iPad now.
Yeah, me too. And I advocate that students find a safe place to do it. If you don't want someone to read your journal, you just put it in a file on the computer, and or you just put it in your notes or whatever, and you can always delete it. So it's helpful, and you can see your progress and your growth. What were you thinking and feeling at a particular time in your life that you may have been struggling? And it's not like you have to journal every day. You journal as needed. And then you think about how you're perceiving that situation now and how you would handle it now, where maybe it was something that was really, really stressful at that time you were journaling about it. And then you see how, okay, you're reframing how you're looking at it. And that's how we see our growth. And you make goals for ourselves, and we work to achieve them. So it's just such a helpful tool.
It is such a helpful tool. And I remember looking at it and seeing like some of the writing that I was when I was 12 years old versus what I'm writing now as a 40-year-old. And I'm like, I was really in depth in thought. I didn't give myself enough credit. I'm like, did I really write like this at this age? And I'm like, wow, okay. You surprise yourself with some of the readings and writings that you've done. You do surprise yourself.
It's nice to be able to reflect back, to look at them.
And I see it now with my children that I see when they were in kindergarten, when they started with their penmanship, and now you see them in older grades. I'm like, okay, you see the growth, you see the potential in them. So journaling, artwork, writing, my children now, they're in theater. So now they're doing screenplays. So now they're sending me, they're giving me the screenplay so I can review them and take a look at them and be critical of them. So to see isn't that great? So seeing them doing their artwork and doing writing and stuff like that, it makes me happy. I'm like, okay, this is a good thing.
And you're validating what they're doing. You're affirming how important what they're doing. And it's all of those things are things that children need to hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I always try to, absolutely. I always try to encourage them. And I'm like, listen, you got to, check your grammar, make sure you ask for ideas. What's your inspiration for this story piece? And just give them the push. Because sometimes you got to push them a little bit. It's like, okay, you can give me more information. Give me more,
Exactly. Dig a little deeper. Right. Absolutely.
And Professor, I just wanted to know, when reading this book, what was really inspired you to really write this children's book? So I know that many of the foundations that you said, it was when you were growing up and you resonated with this story. Was there anything else that inspired you for this particular book?
Well, it's something I put on the back burner for many years. And during COVID, during the lockdown, I wrote the book in 2 days. I needed to find an illustrator, so that took longer. And so I found an illustrator, and we worked together for a year. But it was something I was inspired to do because I saw a need for it. I had reviewed literature on children's books, as I said earlier, and I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And I think it's so important for Black and Brown people to be represented in the literature. And that was the major reason that I did it. So I had seen a few books, but they didn't have people of color at all, or they would describe it using animals or whatever. It's like I wanted people in it, real people telling their real stories. And I felt that it was a way to work on my own healing. As I wrote the book, I tapped into certain things that I thought were finished that weren't finished. And that's not easy to talk about, but that was something that I realized, that you can sometimes push memories away that are kind of painful. And when you're writing about it, you realize, oh, okay, I'm remembering stuff a little bit more vividly than I had before.
Do you think that writing
was healing?
It was healing for you. Do you think that the actual pandemic and being in your home, not being able to do anything, do you think that brought up any other feelings? Or, as you mentioned before, you tapped in during that time and you wrote it in 2 days. Would you have been regularly able to do that if it wasn't around the time of the pandemic?
Probably not. I mean, I had time on my hands. I was teaching remotely. I had a lot of things to do, but then we weren't traveling. We weren't doing things that we would have normally have done. And then I just took the time, and I had a friend who encouraged me and said, "You've always wanted to write this book." I had family who encouraged me. So I just thought, I'm just going to do it. And it just flowed. There was so much inside that needed to come out, and it all came out. So it was a dream fulfilled. Some, having that time to actually do something that I had intentions. I'm going to do that book. I'm going to write that book, and then I get around to it, and then I never got around to it.
We never get around to it. Yep.
Yeah, this time I got around to it and I got it done. So I felt really proud that I took advantage of that time to just do it, like the Nike saying, instead of putting it off.
Just do it.
I
Absolutely.
thought in retirement I would do it. And I thought, well, no, I still have time to do it.
Now's the better time than ever, right?
And I have a lot of students in my classes. The majority of the students who take my class are children who are impacted by addictions. Most of them on the first day when I ask, why are you taking this class? Oh, it fits, the credits fit, they find out later when they learn more about what addiction is, that's why I'm here, right? We kind of gravitate towards different places. The universe, I believe, sends us to different places at different times that we need to be there. And because so many students have been impacted over the years, I feel like this is time. It's time, because a lot of the women I counsel are adult children of alcoholics or of addictions in general, whether it's gambling or if it's eating disorders or whatever it is, who seek me out. So then I just realized, well, I'm doing inner child healing work with them. Why not do it with young children? Because I feel like I wished I had a book like this when I was in kindergarten, so that I would have been able to label what was going on. So that was the other impetus, is that why wait till we're grown up to work on that healing that could start at a younger age, and you could just be in the world of feelings instead of trying to shut yourself off.
But it's never too late. I know that I know myself, it's never too late to find that healing. But I know that if we were able to have that book when we were younger, then maybe some of the things or some of the choices later down the line could have been changed a little bit more in that sense. But during the time, could have been, could have, would have, should have.
Right. I feel like it was part of the journey, right? So you come from a family with addiction, so do I. So that was part of our journey, and we've gotten to healing places. And you're in the helping fields. You want to go into you're in nursing, right? And I've been in the health field for many years. So it's like I was in the clinical field for a while, and I've just come full circle. And I feel like I am more in a field of prevention as well as helping people to be their best selves.
Absolutely, absolutely. During the time of your work, did you have any favorite writers or any literary influencers for your work? I mean, as an educator and as a writer, as an author, was there any favorite writers that might have helped you find your style in writing?
I love the Obamas, Michelle Obama.
I do too.
I've read her book, Becoming. I've read Barack Obama's book. I've just, when I have time to read for pleasure, those are my go-tos. I read a lot of books that deal with spirituality too, that like Kahlil Gibran. I like those kind of readings. I do a lot of meditations. I read a lot of those kind of types of books, not to remember all the authors, but kind of like 24-hour meditation books that are real helpful too.
A lot of
I find they're very grounding.
Right. Yeah. Some of the books that I've been recently looking more into is called Atomic Habit. So trying to change the habits in my home, in my life, trying to have different approaches and different perspectives. So I can lean towards spirituality as well, because changing my habits, it starts small. And I thought that it was like this tremendous hill that I have to climb, but it really isn't. You have to start with the small steps first. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to gravitate more and reading more. So that was definitely one of the things and definitely an influence to the podcast as well. Trying to find ways that are more effective. How can I be more creative and not have burnout? So those are the things for educators, for parents, for everybody that can relate. They want to do 15 million things at the same time, but you got to do one thing at a time. And by the time you know it, you have your task all completed.
Absolutely. And we have to have balance. It has to be balance between work, school, leisure, and prioritizing things and not doing all the things that have to be done, but maybe some of the leisure things have to be moved into a priority so we have more to give to all the other things that we have to do. I've learned that from time management and stress management, things that I advocate in my healthy living and stress management class. And then trying to be more mindful with everything. It's real
mindfulness is another thing.
Huge. Right.
Absolutely. And sometimes we forget that we're only human. We only could do but so much.
And not to be afraid to ask for help when we need it.
It was another book that I just I read with my boys was the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse by Charles McAmee. And that was a book that kind of highlighted that we can still find compassion in strangers and we can still give ourselves credit for feeling the way that we feel. We might feel lost. We might feel alone in the world. But this book really was something very special that we shared between myself and my family. Very nice. Just having the capacity just to read the books and have a deep conversation with it, that to me is leisure time as well. So.
Oh, of course. Yes. And it's such quality time with your boys. That's great.
So I have one more question for you, Professor. Are you working on anything new?
I am not working on anything at the moment. I started thinking about writing something related to spirituality, mindfulness, stress management, trying to help with mental health issues for children, but nothing really, concrete yet. Just thoughts. It's a lot of like drafts of like free association of different things, and not sure if I want to take Rena another step further into another, like a sequel, doing something else, related to depression and children living with parents or family members who have mental health problems and how to cope with that. So that might be something that might come out one day.
I mean, that would be something I would look forward to. I mean, I know you have a lot on your plate along with the busy schedule, but I mean, it would be something really cool to see if there was something that you do have something in the future to talk about. But I want to thank you, Professor Cleveland, for coming on with the podcast with me. I definitely want to let everybody know that you can find the book. I'm going to put this up for you guys. So you guys can go ahead and you can purchase this book. It's Not My Fault. And Professor Cleveland, you can find her on the website. You can have all the information here. You have this connection. So you just scan that QR code. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to post that into our show notes. We're going to post that in all of our links. We had such an amazing time today with you, Professor. I can't tell you how important it was for you to share this story with me.
Thank you so much, Stefanie, for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It's been a wonderful evening. And thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Now, guys, if you are interested in purchasing
viewers or listeners, I'm not sure the language, but thank you all. I appreciate it.
No, not a problem, Professor. So you guys can continue follow, liking, and share on Table for Four, a family conversation podcast. Here, you're going to continue seeing all the wonderful things we're going to be talking about, sharing stories with everybody here. And Professor, I just want to thank you again for coming out with having our conversation about It's Not My Fault. Thank you so much, Professor.